西，我成就在你身上，我成就在你身上。
钱女士，你怎么
挑唆我儿子？你不让我看我孙女？
你先回去，钱女士。
你要是觉得我跟你儿子
别说话了，你先别说话。
你让他跟我离婚。
钱女士，你信我，来，你信我，你先坐回去。哎，钱女士，行，你尊重我们一拍即合好不好？你先。
家有没有老人？
好了，钱女士。
20 years ago, the mother-in-law abandoned her husband and child to leave home. Now that she is old, she wants her son to support her, but she encountered strong opposition from her daughter-in-law. The daughter-in-law said bluntly, "When you were young you remarried another man, you completely ignored this family. Now that you have been kicked out by others when you are old, you suddenly remember them again. How can there be such a good thing in this world? Wherever it is cold, you should go there." In the video, this hysterical old woman is Ruoshi's mother-in-law. She was just kicked out by her stepson. Now, with nowhere to go, she thinks of her biological son whom she has ignored for 20 years. In her opinion, her son is a piece of flesh that fell from her own body. Now that she is old, her son has the obligation to support her until the end. But the daughter-in-law firmly disagrees, and directly says, as long as the mother-in-law dares to enter the house, she will immediately leave with the child. However, the husband not only does not oppose, but also fully supports his wife, firmly not letting his mother into the house. At this, Ms. Chen is completely stunned. Now she is already at an advanced age, yet she has ended up homeless, and may even live out her final years in loneliness. Thinking of this, she feels deeply wronged, and seeks help from the program team. So what will be the final result? Why does the daughter-in-law have such deep hatred toward her? According to Ruoshi, 20 years ago the father-in-law died in a car accident. The mother-in-law, unable to bear the burden, directly abandoned her young son, who is Ruoshi's husband, and chose to remarry. Afterwards, the mother-in-law completely ignored her own son, but instead gave all her care to her stepson. The husband, growing up without father or mother, was often ridiculed by classmates. He once begged his mother bitterly, asking her to come see him, even just once. But the mother-in-law was unmoved, refusing with all kinds of excuses. In her mind, her biological son would always be hers no matter what, but the stepson was different. She had to treat the stepson twice as well, so that when she grew old, she could have 2 sons to care for her. Just thinking about it, she felt her later years would be very happy. The pitiful husband lived with his grandparents all those years. Because of limited financial conditions, he suffered many hardships. Fortunately, he was very determined, successfully entered university, and after graduation found a good job. Later, the two met through a friend's introduction. After learning about her husband's background, Ruoshi not only did not look down on him, but felt even more pity for his suffering. She secretly vowed in her heart that she would treat her husband well, and make up for all the suffering he had endured over the years. In order to save money, they only held a simple wedding, but this did not affect their happiness after marriage. But what was puzzling is that, after they got married, the long-vanished mother-in-law appeared again.
没有，我的家我凭什么不能回来？我凭什么要轻视他？
可是为什么今天你求助想要回家，对面坐的是儿媳妇呢？怎么不是儿子当家？
因为我回家，就他阻拦，
谁阻拦？
我儿子才吞吞吐吐的。
他做过的事儿，洋洋拿那个洋洋来说，他往年生病过生日一次没回来过，打个电话也没有。
20 years ago the father-in-law died, and the mother-in-law remarried. Afterwards she completely ignored her son, but instead treated the stepson with extra care. Now she has been driven out of the house by the stepson, yet she wants her son to support her. The daughter-in-law firmly refuses. Speaking of this mother-in-law, Ruoshi cannot recall a single good thing. Since the remarriage, her whole heart has been with that other family, and toward her biological son she always had an indifferent attitude. After their marriage, the mother-in-law would occasionally come back, but at most only stayed a few days, then hurriedly left, busy serving the whole other family. But when it was her own daughter-in-law's postpartum confinement period, she could not spare the time. Helpless, Ruoshi had to ask her own mother to come and take care of her. But just after the confinement period ended, the mother-in-law suddenly appeared. Learning that she lacked sufficient breast milk, the mother-in-law this time brought a so-called secret recipe passed down for 100 years. Although this care came a little late, Ruoshi was still moved, and without thinking drank it all. But not long after swallowing, she began to suffer abdominal pain, sweating all over, and her vision went black. The mother-in-law, seeing this, acted as if nothing had happened, going about her own business. In the end it was Ruoshi, enduring severe pain, who dialed the emergency number herself. When she was sent to the hospital, her condition was already critical. The doctors immediately began rescue treatment. Fortunately, in the end, nothing serious happened. The reason she reacted so severely was because the secret recipe her mother-in-law gave her contained many ingredients that conflicted with her body. What was even more infuriating was that, watching her daughter-in-law being sent to the hospital, the mother-in-law not only did not follow, but even left quietly without a word, not caring whether the young child at home was taken care of. After learning of this, Ruoshi was furious. How could there be such an irresponsible old woman? For herself it was nothing, but for such a small child, how could she be so heartless? What if something had happened? But the past is the past. After all, life had to go on. Facing a heavy monthly mortgage, her husband's salary alone was not enough. Ruoshi had no choice but to return to work right after giving birth. But someone still had to take care of the child, so they asked the mother-in-law to help for a while. After all, she was the child's grandmother, surely more reliable than strangers. But after the mother-in-law learned of this idea, from then on her phone could never be reached again. With no choice, they had to hire a nanny. Later they found out, the mother-in-law was busy taking care of her stepson's child. How could she spare any effort for her own grandson? When the child grew older and they wanted the grandmother to spend birthdays together, she always made excuses to avoid it. Back then, they called and pleaded countless times for her to come, but she never agreed. Now that she is old and has been kicked out by others, she suddenly remembers she still has this son, but it is already too late.
你有妈没有？
你坐那中不中啊？
你先有妈了，你
别
先有
生活了
媳妇了。
钱女士，你先坐那儿，咱好好说事儿。
你坐，你坐，你坐。我坐那不都一样吗？
你给我坐这边，不能坐在小狐狸精那边。
你
张小伟，你是不是我生的？
你干嘛？
你是不是我生的？你跟我说。
你怎么又站起来了？你坐回去。
我是你妈。
妈，你还准备打我了是吧？
你想干嘛？
就是想打你。
你想干嘛，钱女士？你干嘛？
我就是想打你，
钱女士，
无用的。
The father-in-law died, the mother-in-law remarried, completely ignoring her biological son, but giving all her care to the stepson. Originally she thought the stepson would remember her goodness, and care for her in her old age. But unexpectedly, it was all just a daydream. The mother-in-law's second husband unfortunately passed away, and her life was thrown into chaos. Over the years, as her age increased, her health deteriorated, sometimes falling ill, no longer able to work. With her husband gone, her only support was gone as well. Immediately, the stepson's attitude toward her changed completely, often showing her a sour face, sometimes even cursing her. Finally, seeing that she was of no use, and would only become a burden in the future, he directly kicked her out of the house. With nowhere to go, she set her eyes on her biological son. In her opinion, the stepson had no obligation to care for her, but the son was different. He was a piece of flesh from her body. Even if the sky fell, the son must support her. But the daughter-in-law was the obstacle she could not overcome. Over the years, her actions had completely broken the daughter-in-law's heart. Back then, when they needed her the most, no matter how much they begged, she never came. Now that she has been thrown out by others, she suddenly remembers this home. What do you take this place for? A guest house? Coming and going as you please? Ruoshi also told her husband clearly, if the mother-in-law dared to enter this house, she would leave with the child. Between wife and mother, the husband resolutely chose to stand on his wife's side. After all, people have feelings, and he knew very well in his heart who was right and who was wrong. But the mother-in-law did not think it was her fault, instead believing that they were unfilial. The more she thought, the angrier she became. On the program site, if not for the host restraining her, she would have rushed up several times to strike her daughter-in-law. The guests in the audience could no longer bear it, and when they began to criticize her, the mother-in-law pointed at their faces and cursed, "I am already at this age, and I came here for you to lecture me?" Truly, when a scholar meets a soldier, reasoning cannot get through. The atmosphere instantly dropped to freezing point. The emotional mentors present were all battle-hardened, but encountering such a mother-in-law was indeed the first time. However, with their rich experience, after repeated persuasion, they managed to achieve at least a little effect. Most importantly, the daughter-in-law was reasonable. She also said that as long as the mother-in-law realized her mistakes, she would still accept her. After all, she is her husband's mother. With this, the matter came to an end.
When she was young, Ms. Chien chose to remarry, leaving her biological son to be raised by the grandparents, while she devoted all her efforts to caring for her stepson. She thought that by doing so, she would gain double filial piety in her later years. But reality gave her the cruelest slap. The stepson kicked her out, while her biological son, whose heart had long been scarred, together with his wife, rejected her. Some say she is just reaping what she sowed, having misplaced her devotion all her life. Others believe that blood is blood, and no matter the mistakes, the son still has the duty of support. But from another perspective, when the child needed motherly love the most, she was not there. Now, in her twilight years, she suddenly remembers the word family affection. Is it really not too late? Affection can be forgiven, but can it be forgotten? Responsibility can be borne, but should it be willing? This is a question without a standard answer. What do you think? Can a mother who once abandoned her own child still deserve that child to reach out and pull her up in her old age? Welcome to leave your thoughts in the comments. I really look forward to hearing your voice. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. We will see you in the next episode.